PGA Nation, we are back and we are heading to Utah. If it doesn't lack anything, it's not a cool name, the Black Desert Championship. I am excited. I am intrigued. I think one way to lay out this tournament for everyone, if you have kids, right? Stay with me here. If you have kids, you've heard of the floor is lava game, right? That's what we're getting into this week. If you step on the lava, you're gonna lose. So if you avoid the lava, right, then you'll do pretty well. So today, this week, the floor is lava at the Black Desert Classic. Spence, I see you're still at the new house. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Joel. Slowly putting it together. I promise you I will have pictures in the background next week. It's a work in progress over here, but excited to be doing this show with you guys. You know, we've talked about this almost every single week during the off season, or the fall season, I guess we'll call it here. But, you know, these are the events where I do think that there is an edge to be had. We have the unknowns of the course. And if nothing else, Joel, like you kind of talked about it, it's a very unique venue at the end of the day. So I'm excited to see this on television. I think it's going to be beautiful from a picturesque standpoint. We'll see if we can dive into some of the data and help everybody out, though, with some names to consider.
And as you alluded to, you definitely have your work cut out for you this week, as there's not a lot of history or data to understand the course and the metrics. But as you do every week, you bring the rest course breakdown. You can help us understand what types of things to look for as we break down this tournament. David, how about you? How you doing tonight?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I actually watched some of your American rugby soccer earlier this week. I watched the Monday night football between the Chiefs and the Saints, and it was interesting. I had a wee
rugby soccer. Where did that come from?
I don't know. You guys call it football. The rest of the world doesn't. You know, football famously is played with your foot, and they don't really play with their foot that much. Like sometimes you have one guy like specifically who is designed for using his foot, and everyone else is using their hands from as far as I can see. So, you know, technically not a great.
In our defense, they don't use crickets to play cricket. So, I mean, why do we have to name it by exactly what you use to play?
That's true, but although I think that is the colonization of a French term, croquet, becoming cricket. So, you know, there's some debatable stuff there. Anyway, I watched American rugby soccer, and I don't know if you know, but there's a guy called Travis Kelce. You might have heard of him. Turns out that Travis Kelce and I are both born on the exact same day, 5th of October, 1989. So we both turned 35 on Saturday. I'm now closer to 50 than I am to 20, which is depressing. And I have kindly reminded my girlfriend that Travis Kelce is currently dating Taylor Swift. So she's incredibly lucky to have me is the end of that conversation.
Well, first of all, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Second of all, I don't know if the audience knows this, but your girlfriend is actually more famous than Travis Kelce's girlfriend. I don't know if you want to explain who she is or get behind that, but I'll just leave that teaser out there for the audience to guess and try and figure out on their own.
Well, I mean, she's a top secret spy because she can't actually tell me what she does in her day job most of the time. So yeah, she's incredibly famous, and yeah, you'll all be none the wiser. Good luck.
Well, it's actually impossible because I don't think there is a woman on the world more famous than Taylor Swift. So I actually put her in an impossible scenario. But all the while, I am excited to break this down and draft tonight. Spence, like I said, you had your work cut out for you tonight, but I'd love to hear what you're looking for on the course at the Black Desert in Utah.
So on paper, we have a venue that's 7,371 yards, par 71, bent grass greens. There are always going to be unknowns about a course when professional golf hasn't been held in that state since 1963. That alone is going to be challenging the handicap for what exactly Utah golf looks like in a vacuum situation there. But I think the construction of a statistical model probably does. And I know it makes it more convoluted because we don't necessarily get an answer here, but like there's more questions than answers when you kind of start diving into this venue. It only finished around a year ago. It was the last course that Tom Weiskopf undertook before his death at the end of 2022. I think if you look at this, though, there's going to be some very stark things for television here. unique things that are going to be seen. I wish we had a better field for that reason. The more stark feature is going to be how this course runs through, and you've already alluded to this, Joel, a lava field. It's surrounded by mountains. That factor provides one of the most impressive components any property will have all season. Then it adds to the irregular aspect of a venue that's going to sit 3,000 feet above elevation. We saw an example, a much more extended version of that example when they went to Castle Pines in Colorado for the first time. I don't want people to hear that and think that you're getting the exact same property here, because that was a course at 330 to 370. Everybody was hitting drives because of the elevation. It's going to be more than Arizona. It's going to be more than Vegas next week. It's going to be more than a lot of those spots. But at the end of the day, you essentially have this wide open facility that if you don't hit it so far out of bounds and into that lava boundary that we keep talking about, there's a lot of room to be had out here. So I ran a very condensed model at the end of the day, but I don't think that prerequisite for distance is the only thing you should be looking for. There's a lot more that goes in to trying to figure out what's the best way to go about this. I added extra putting. I added extra approach metrics. That would be more of the key stats for me than just pure how far do you hit the ball.
I love it. That is the best course breakdown you're going to find. Spence, we appreciate you and the work that you do every week on the course breakdown. David, I have a question for you. How is your typing so loud? Every time you're typing, we get
really?
So loud. Is your microphone right next to the keyboard?
My microphone's here. So I have no idea. Maybe I'm an aggressive typer. I don't know. I'm just furiously getting my lineup ready because I cannot possibly let Spence win 2 weeks in a row, because we see what happens when Spence gets on these runs, right? Like he wins one and then suddenly he wins like 4 in a row. And so like my aim is to curb that in its infancy before it progresses too far and ends up in another Spencer hot streak in the DFS.
It's a good point. Spencer does have a tendency to go on streaks and win bunches in a row. First of all, congratulations are in order, Spence, as you got the big win last week, following up this week, going for 2 in a row. You did get the chance to pick the order. I know you'll be picking first. David, you want to pull up the draft board and we'll dive right into the draft. While we pull that up, Spence, order.
So it's very hard in Vegas. Maybe it's because you used to put coins in slot machines and we don't have that feature anymore. Maybe it's a process of moving. Couldn't find a coin, but what I could find here is I have a poker chip. One side is Jimmy Connors winning at Caesar's Palace. The other side, very fitting, is Hopin Crosby at the golf tournament of champions. So I am going to flip this coin to see who comes second, or this poker chip here. David, you will be Hopin Crosby. Joel, you take me as a Jimmy Connors sort of a guy. So we will flip it and we will get the order, and then I will make my selection.
Okay, while we wait. Spence.
It is Jimmy Connors. I don't know if that can be seen.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an early win on the show. I plan on following up with more wins, but I appreciate that. For those of you that might be new, even though most of you have probably been here before, I encourage you to log into YouTube. You can participate in the draft from YouTube, get in the chat. Audience drafts their own team. You'll be drafting fourth. It works like your typical fantasy football draft where we go 1 through 4, then 4 through 1. So audience will have 2 in a row. You will have to stay within a DraftKings salary. So the caveat there is you can't just take all the best players. You do need to make sure you can afford each player that you draft on your roster. With the first pick, Spence, you're on the clock.
So you guys can blame Joel, unfortunately, for being last. Those were direct orders from the top from Joel to put you guys in the last spot. If I had my way, you guys could have had the first pick over me. We know how that works. But Joel is a very demanding person at the end of the day. So unfortunately, you guys had to go in the last spot. Blame Joel. Send the request into him.
I just suggest you're nicer to me. Maybe I'll put you guys first. But the way you guys treat me, I can't have you guys picking first with this attitude.
So when I ran this to try to figure out what I wanted to do, and I'm going to give a very basic answer right now, and then I'm going to go into why this is the selection and why I've even mentioned this. So I run my model every single week. I'm looking for a specific course build. I then compare that data and compare it to the rest of the field. that is not an abnormal answer. Any good model is going to do that. But what I'm trying to find when I go to that is not every single person that's ranked first and every person that is ranked second has the same disparity from tournament to tournament. It's very important to dive a little bit deeper into those numbers and figure out where is the edge that you have from player to player. And when we get these quote unquote watered down fields and a wide open board, a lot of times you expect it to be condensed pricing to where all of the top of the board is in the same general section. Books don't know what to do, and they throw everybody in there. We'll call it 20 to 35 to 1 on the odds board. And it's kind of pick your poison and go from there. This is not to say that this golfer is Scotty Scheffler. We know this is not to be true. This is not to say that this golfer is necessarily going to win this golf tournament in the same way that Scotty Scheffler wins. But there was one player for me that was, this is a betting answer more than a DFS answer, the most mispriced player on the board. I thought he should have been the favorite when the odds opened up. His odds got hit very, very quickly. We've now seen him more down into that 20 to 22 to 1 range. I'm going to take Seamus Power. I think Seamus has the best combination that you can find of recent form and long-term data. 17 consecutive rounds of shooting par or better. He also lapped the field in that one category that I kept running over and over again in my model. That was combining driving, approach play, and putting, rolling it all into one category. Seamus was so far above everybody else in that category. I don't know why he wasn't the favorite when this opened up. I think he should have been the favorite. And I honestly would have been okay with this number being sub 20 to 1. It's going to be a little bit more accurate for DFS purposes just because he's up there on the board. But I still think he's one of the better outright numbers on the board if you can get him anywhere in that 20 to 1 range.
Seamus Power. And you're right. I mean, if you look at last week, Seamus Power he looked good. He was the second highest priced guy last week. So, I mean, like you said, there's a watered down field, but I think that pick makes a lot of sense at this point. David, well, I'm up next and with the second pick, and it's tough strategy wise this week, especially on the draft, because you kind of, there's no obvious direction that people are going, right? I feel like everyone's kind of up for grabs. So, you don't want to be defensive. I'm going to start with, I'm playing a little defense because I'm playing defense against David with this pick. Probably wouldn't have been my first pick, but I'm taking him because I think David will probably take him before I get back. And it's David's boy. And at 9,200, I think he has upside to win this tournament. I think he's one of the better golfers in this field. So you're getting a bit of a discount. He gave an 11th place last week. He didn't have a round. He hit all 4 rounds under 70. I think he comes back this week with another really good showing, and that's Ryan Fox. I think this is the type of tournament he does play well and play up in tournaments, but this watered down field, Ryan Fox is as good talent-wise as anyone that's going to be playing in this tournament. He puts together another good week this week. I think he can go out as high as win the tournament, if not at least get you a top 10. David, did I get a steal? And if not, you're up with your first pick.
I wasn't going to take Ryan Fox next. I certainly would have considered him in later rounds. I mean, look, part of the concern for me last week, because I thought on paper that the Country Club at Jackson in Mississippi was a perfect fit for Ryan Fox's game in terms of his prowess with his driving distance, his ability, particularly with shorter irons. I thought it was going to be a really good fit. And my concern was that he did an interview about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he said that he had a niggly kind of hip injury, and that was part of the reason why he sort of realized, well, when he discovered that he was injured, that was part of the reason why his approach metrics had fallen away, part of the reason why he had to make some swing changes, and was basically kind of was paying through kind of some dull pain. And so I had some concern going into last week that may still be an issue. And actually, even after the 11th last week, I looked at his stats and I saw his driving distance was actually way down than compared to normal. And that's always a sign for me when somebody's injured. If their driving distance is down, it's like, okay, they're probably still playing through something. Then I dived a bit further and I looked at actually who had the longest drives last week at the Sanderson Farms. And sure enough, there was Ryan Fox in the top 10. So that kind of allayed some of my fears. Of course, now Joel's drafted him, so he's down to WD because of the curse. he drafted. Who did you draft last week? Pearson Coody. You gave as your
JJ
Parker
Spawn.
Coody and JJ Spawn. JJ Spawn out of absolutely nowhere. WD's the Cursor Joel is alive and well, and then you took Parker Coody for first round leader, who also WD'd out of nowhere. So there is that curse on him right now. But look, I do suspect that this is a course where you've got 2 drivable par 4s, you've got 3 par 5s that you can go for. Yes, it's played at altitude. Yes, most of the field are going to get to approach most of those. But given Ryan Fox's short game prowess, I think that that's a really interesting way to approach it, starting in the 9K. In saying that, I'm incredibly disappointed to miss Seamus Power. The other thing to mention about Seamus Power is that he is a Las Vegas resident, so he's used to playing at altitude. He's used to playing desert golf. I would compare TPC Summerlin to what we expect Utah is going to be like, in that there's wide open fairways, there's tons of space, there's like no rough, 50 yards basically that you need to keep it in. But if you're at 51 yards, you're playing out of like near impossible lies, probably taking a drop, probably taking penalty strokes. So Seamus Power's got a lot of experience there. So more disappointed to miss out on Power than Fox, but would have certainly considered Fox towards the end of the draft.
All right. Did you like your pick in?
No, not yet. So I will go and pivot a little bit. I'm going to take Chan Kim here. Look, Chan Kim has been on a really good run his last 7 tournaments, 6 finishes of 33rd or better, 92nd in the FedEx Cup, so doesn't necessarily have to worry too much about the pressure of whether he's going to retain his card or not. But one of the key things for Chan Kim for me is he's got that overall total driving ability, a mixture of long driver, but also accurate as well. And I think it is really key to have that combination of not just complete bombers, but you can't, if you are going to miss, you can't miss too wide, because it is going to be quite a severe penalty if you do. And so I like that combination that you're getting with Chan Kim. The other thing I'd mention as well is that he won last year on the Corn Ferry Tour in Boise, Idaho at altitude as well. So he has got a good experience playing at altitude previously. We've seen him play well in Birdie Fest previously, at 12th at the John Deere Classic and a 12th at the Wyndham Championship, as well as a 10th at the ISCO. So I think that he's just playing very, very good golf. He's a strong driver over the golf ball. And the fact that he's won at altitude before, I think, is very promising.
All right. Chan Kim, certainly playing good golf. Been mentioned on this show the last couple of weeks in these waterfowl fields. I think he's really interesting. Audience, great job getting your picks in. It looks like they're both in. So, wow, ahead of the curve. Taking on a risk, a very me-like play by the audience. Going with JJ Spawn, fresh off a withdraw. And Thorbenson, who we drafted last week, he had a great outing, a great showing, going back to that well at 8,800. I think those are 2 solid picks from the audience. Spence, would love to get your take on the last round.
I'll exclude my pick because that's going to be my favorite selection, obviously. I have the 101 of the draft, so I took the player that I like the most. But I would say of the 4 other players that have been taken at this point, Chan Kim would probably be my second favorite. David talked about his past success and elevation. Any of the weighted total driving numbers have him inside the top 10. He was also inside the top 10 for me for expected scoring for this course. So had an outright ticket on him last week. He was my favorite play on the board in that event. I think he's certainly in play once again.
I love it. David, we heard your take. You got Chan Kim. Would love your take on the audience picks, and then you got your second.
Yeah, look, I'm probably going to stray away from JJ Spawn just until we know exactly what happened there with the WD. He hasn't really disclosed what happened. I mean, he had a somewhat poor round, but was it just a case of he had enough and packed up and went home, or was there something kind of more substantial to it? So, look, I mean, the fact you haven't taken him, Joel, is always promising. I mean, that always reduces the withdrawal percentage by approximately 46% chance. So, there's that factor in there. And then Michael Thorbjornsson, look, we've seen plenty of upside from him, right? And his ability with the driver in particular, I think, is promising coming in here. So I'm going to go with another golfer who is just playing good golf, and that's Andrew Novak is on a hot streak at the moment with the approach. You can tell from Joel's face that is a steal, but look, he's just playing really, really well. And other than 70th at the Scottish Open and 52nd at the Wyndham, his form line, other than that, since June is 14th, 20th, 7th, 24th, 23rd. So ultra consistent, and he's doing it in the right way. He's doing it with his ball striking. One thing I will mention, I think TPC Scottsdale and Tom Weiskopf design another desert golf course. Another golf course where you can score. However, if you find the desert, you can get into real trouble very quickly. He's played there once and he finished 8th, and that was earlier this year in a very strong field, much stronger than this. So I think that he carries across some of that form, continues his run on Weiskopf designs, and comes out with another good result here.
Well, Andrew Novak is definitely one of my guys. I mean, I'd probably draft Novak like every other tournament that we have to draft. So I obviously like the pick. I was going to take him with my next pick, so I'm going to pivot. Definitely got the steal there for the reason that you said. Andrew Novak is criminally disrespected by DraftKings. And it's funny because, I like him a lot. I draft him all the time. I would honestly say he's probably big picture better for smaller cash games than, thinking a GPP, but he's pretty consistently a good player and getting you, pretty good results. In these types of watered down fields, I just don't understand why they keep underpricing him. Like, he should have been at least in the high 8s, if not low 9Ks with the way he's been playing. So it seems like they just aren't going to give him his respect. And until that changes, especially in these weaker fields, I'm going back to that well every time. Well, I did have to pivot. I'm going back to another guy that I would probably consider one of my guys. He's fallen off on the community, on and off on our drafts for the last few months. But he showed that he can make putts again, which was a long time before he can make putts. And if Daniel Berger is making putts, Daniel Berger might be the best golfer in this field. He had an injury. His game had fallen off for some time. And then he came back and he just couldn't make putts. And the ball striking was there. He could hit the ball. He just couldn't putt. And last week he showed he's found something. He can make some putts. If he's found any consistency with that flat stick, Daniel Berger is going to be dangerous. And in these types of fields, he could be the best golfer in the field. So at 7,700, I love the upside you get with Berger. And what's really interesting here is the ownership is, not low, but it's not crazy. I mean, I thought the ownership would have been higher for a guy like Daniel Berger here. I think at 14%, which is what I'm seeing now, I'm happy to take that on. Spence, you got Seamus Power. Now you got 2 here. Who are you looking for?
Novak was definitely a direct steal from me also. I thought of players that were $8,000 or above. He was probably the most mispriced option on the board. I would have had him about $1,000 more expensive than where he was. So I think there's a discount there. I also like your pick, Joel, of Berger. There's something I run every single week, and it's always trying to find how does somebody suit a course with their putter for the course-specific outlook. And yeah, Berger has now made putts. He has said he's healthy. The back is one of the hard things to do when you have when you're putting and you have a bad back. That's something that's very difficult to get down into that position. So if he's actually healthy now and he has positive trajectory on bent grass greens, I think there's a lot to like about that. So both of those 2 options would have been in play for me. So, but with that out, I'm probably just going to go the route where I will have probably the most popular start I have ever done before. It's going to be, according to my math right now, at least the first or the second or the first and the third most in popularity. I don't love the hometown narrative that has come into play for Patrick Fishburne, but I do think Fishburne here is one of the 2 or 3 best golfers in the field with a little bit of a discount that we're getting. You could look at some of the statistical profile and find reasons to not play him, but I looked for par 5 scoring. I looked for players that were inside of the top 60 of my model in every single iteration from a statistical perspective of how I ran it. Seamus was 1. Fishburne was 1. And then for my next pick, because there's 5 of them total, I'm going to take Ben Coles at 7,300. I thought Coles was far too low price tag wise and provides a lot of safety. So it's a lot of popularity in this lineup. I'm going to have to pivot at some point, but I feel pretty confident going Seamus and Fishburne and just figuring out the rest in a way to get different elsewhere.
I can't help but laugh. Listen, you're 100% right, but it's just funny that these tournaments have gotten to a point where we're confident in Seamus and Fishburne. That is our confidence level, and it's funny because it's Seamus and Fishburne, but you're right. I mean, they are 2 of the better plays in this tournament. It's just crazy how watered down these fields get, especially in these kind of off-season events. Interesting round we just had. Spence, we'd love to get your take on the last few picks before I go here with my next pick.
I really like the Novak selection probably the most. I would say Berger would be the second choice for me. They're both going to be in my player pool. Obviously, I took Fishburne and Cole, so those are options too. My only concern about Thorbjornsen, and I don't necessarily have probably as much of a concern as some of the industries might in this spot, but you're definitely getting a very heightened price tag from where we were 1 week ago. Like I bet him at 125 to 1 to win that event. And now all of a sudden he's 40 to 1, give or take at most books. And he's nearly $2,000 more expensive. I think there's a lot of upside for him. The ownership is at least somewhat neutral at about 10 to 12%. That would be my one concern with him, though, if I'm looking for a reason not to play him. But he's still a top 30 golfer at the end of the day.
Fair enough. All right. All right. I actually think this week there's some really strong value plays. So I'm going to stick there. I'm going to go to another value play who I really like this week. A guy who's been playing pretty well, really good form, and that's Patton Kizzire. Patton Kizzire is only 7,700. Based on what we've seen of him recently and based on the competition here, the field that we're in, I thought this was a mispricing. I thought he should have been in the 8K, mid 8K range. The ownership looks reasonable. Again, I'm seeing about 16% at this point. But if you look at the metrics, at the Sanderson Farms, he gained almost 4 strokes on approach. He had a good putter. He's been very solid around the green. At the Procore back in September, he won the tournament. Again, gained 3.5 strokes on approach. He had a red-hot putter then, but that's carried over. He's still putting well. This is not a historically great putter. So if he's found something with that putter and he's going to continue to strike the ball well, I think he's one of the better players in this tournament. I think he can even go out and win it. So at 7,700, I value Kizzire as much as almost anybody in this field, and that's where this pricing is different, right? Scotty Scheffler at 11K is different than, no offense, Seamus Power, right, at 1030. Now, Seamus Power is better than Patton Kizzire, but there is a difference between Scotty Scheffler being at that price and Seamus Power. I think every golfer in this field is closer. And so, therefore, you don't have to prioritize spending up or going stars and scrubs or anything like that in a field like this. David, you're up next with your third pick. But love your take on the last few picks and who are you looking for with your third?
Shout out to Sia Najad in the chat. We need to get Sia back on the show sometime soon. He's obviously hit the big time now. We all know that. So, but we'd love to have him back on the Draftcast. And Sia said Foxberger and Kizzire are all definitely WDs now. So just mark those in your little notebook, never to draft those players because they're absolutely not going to see out all 4 rounds of the tournament. But Daniel Berger is a direct steal from me. Look, I don't know if it's you can say you're early on him because of the 7th last week, but obviously we've known about the injury struggles, and if he has found something in that wee break that he's just had between the end of the regular season and the fall series, well, I'm quite happy to jump back on him again because, as you said, I think rightfully so, that it is healthy peak. He would be the best player in this field, no doubt. So to get him at 7,700 feels like an absolute steal. So that would be my favorite of the recent picks. Direct steal from me. I'm going to go and take a player that I've had probably too much time for across the course of his career, but I do feel that Vince Whaley actually has more upside than a lot of people give him credit for, and he's a lowly 7,400, showing only 4% ownership as well. And I just love that you're getting some leverage there on a player who can drive it long, who can putt really well, who can chip really well. 16th last week at the Sanderson Farms. Now, if we're looking at playing at altitude, he played recently at the Barracuda Championship, which is played in Tahoe. He finished second there at altitude recently, so he's got that. And then TPC Summerlin last year, he finished 13th as well at another desert golf course, as well as having a 25th at the TPC Craig Ranch, where he's finished 26th before in his first 2 starts there. That's another Weiskopf design, played in McKinney, Texas, slow scoring. Drivers a strong advantage there as well. You need to take advantage of the par 5s. I think it's a very, very similar comp course that you could look at here. So I think Vince Whaley has more upside than perhaps people give him credit for, and maybe taking the 7,400 as a bit of a quirky alternative play at low ownership there.
All right. There it is. Vince Whaley. I feel like he's becoming one of your guys. I feel like you've taken him a few times. Going back to him here, look, definitely seems like a good spot to take a shot on him. Audience doing a great job tonight getting their picks in quickly. First one in with Justin Lower. Need one more to be double to lock that pick in. Make sure it's not one of the names that just got listed because I was going to take him.
While we wait, I mean, remember last full season, like Vince Whaley was like the hottest commodity, and like everyone thought that he was going to be the next big thing in 2024, and he kind of went through that run. I mean, he had 6 at Boise in that altitude tournament that I mentioned that Chan Kim actually won. So that kind of kicked it off, and then he had a string of just like top 25s that included the 13th at Shrines Open. So it was about this time last year that he kind of like made hay. And so I'm kind of relying on him coming back and doing that again. But like if you compare where the hype around Vince Whaley that time, I know that Sia was big on Vince Whaley at that time of year as well. We really kind of expected to kick on in 2024. But you know, that hasn't come to fruition. But some good form last week, and I think promising taking him here.
Boom, Hall. Pissed. Was gonna take Hall. I gotta pivot again. Steal for the audience. 2 solid picks. Both guys were on my radar if I was looking for my next pick. So I like the direction the audience is going here. David, would love your take on the audience, and then you're up with your 4th.
Yeah, I think Harry Hall's going to be quite popular this week. Obviously, he's a Vegas guy. He's not going to be foreign to this type of environment. He knows what it's like to play in the desert. He knows what it's like to play at altitude as well. So when you're making those adjustments for distances and taking altitude into account with all the other confluence of factors that caddies and players have to take in when choosing clubs, Harry Hall is going to have a leg up in that situation. My concern comes twofold. One, I think he's pretty high priced at $8,400 compared to other names. I mean, he's more expensive than Andrew Novak, for example, and he's high owned as well. Like he has 11% ownership, and do I really want to put that much faith in a guy who, for me, lacks the requisite kind of power with the driver that I'd really be looking for ideally? Like he's not the strongest driver of the golf ball, and I think that is going to be an advantage this week. I don't think it's the be on end all. I think a lot of these holes are going to be reachable for the majority, but the fact he's not that accurate off the tee, he's pretty short off the tee, and he's going to be pretty popular. It's probably going to be in the void for me. So after saying that, he's probably going to finish top 10 for the audience now.
There you have it. David, you got your 4th here, 8,500 per pick to spend. Who are you looking for with your 4th?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead here and, again, take another kind of left field play a little bit. I'm going to take Chesson Hadley, who is probably one of the more experienced players in this field. There's obviously a lot of youth coming through who are playing in these sort of alternative 4 series events, trying to retain their card or just moving their way up to the PGA Tour. Chesson Hadley currently is 137th on the FedEx Cup points ranking, so he's got every incentive to come out and play very well. His best finish recently did come at altitude. That was 24th at the Barracuda. But if we look at some of like his previous experience in the desert, GPC Scottsdale, he's finished 5th and 23rd previously, as well as a 20th at another Todd Weiskopf design. And at Summerlin was really where those stats shone through for me. So he's finished 5th, 4th, 7th, 18th, 27th, 7th. So he's got great desert form in neighboring Las Vegas, Nevada at the Shriners. So given he's had that experience in the desert, he's had good results recently at altitude. Again, I think that he's an interesting option in the low 7Ks at very low ownership as well. I'm only seeing 2.2%. So really nice pivot from Henrik Norlander, who's going to be very popular down there. Hayden Springer, who's going to be popular. Ben Coles, who's also going to be popular. I think you can go Chesson Hadley and get some leverage down in that low 7.
Chesson Hadley. I like that pick. I think he's a really good value. A guy who's being able to show up at only 7,200. It seems a little underpriced in this field. All right, I got to go with my 4th. A few of my guys were stolen, so I'm doing a little pivot here, and I'm going to take Lucas Glover. I liked what we saw from Lucas Glover last week, especially if he's going to be able to make some putts. He's found a putter that is hot. That's usually typically his biggest weakness. He's gained strokes putting last week. The ball striking is typically there for him, especially in this field. I think he's one of the better ball strikers. If he carries some of that putting momentum over, I think he gets a really strong result as upside to top 10, win the tournament. A lot to like from me with Lucas Glover this week. Spence, would love your take on the last round, and then you got 2 here.
Harry Hall is up there in price and is going to be a little bit more owned than people would think, but I like the Harry Hall selection by the audience. It's, David alluded to this. There's a UNLV background for him. There's an understanding of this area of the globe. There's a golfer who is starting to peak in a lot of the statistical metrics that I am looking for in my model and who graded inside of the top 21 for me for win equity. Now, when you have an $8,400 price tag, you're going to need that to be the case in this situation because this is not $7,000 Harry Hall or whatever we get some of these weeks. But I think Hall is a good selection from the audience there. I also like the Lauer pick that they made. I thought it was a good back-to-back selection of 2 golfers that I think are going to make the cut. I'm going to get different with one of my picks, and this will be where I create some of my leverage. But for my first selection here, I wasn't even necessarily planning to do this, but I think it's just become a thing on this show that I do every single week now. I will take Mac Meisner. I thought he was a value where he was priced. And then for me, there were 5 golfers that I alluded to that ranked inside of the top 60 of all the statistical categories I ran. Seamus and Fishburne. Eric Van Rooyen, surprisingly, was one of the other ones. Maybe it's not surprisingly. He's one of the favorites in the tournament, but not a name that typically grades very well for me, did this week. And then, so those are 3 guys that are, $9,000 or above, wherever Van Rooyen actually is there in the price scale. But then you had 2 long shot names, Ben Coles being one of them. I understand why there's popularity. And then it's the one name that nobody seems to be on this week. Maybe moved up a little bit. I see 3% ownership right now, but I'm going to bet Sami Valimaki in a lot of different ways on the board this week. And this is a boom or bust selection. And I understand that, but there are certain statistical data points that are pushing in the right direction for him. This is a golfer that 12 of his last 13 tournaments, he hasn't come inside the top 30. This is why you're getting this ownership percentage that's going to be 2-3% at the end of the day. But the driver is a positive mark in my sheet. The weight of proximity is a positive mark. The putting is a positive mark. You add all 3 of those things together, it's a top 5 expected player in those 3 categories. And that put him right next to all of the big boys, if we want to call them that, of this field. So there's a lot of popularity with this build. I'm going to have to get different somewhere. I think Valimaki accomplishes that and still gives me a lot of upside on the table.
I think you're right. You have mentioned him before. I think he's an interesting pick. We've seen him pop in some of these bigger events as well. So I think there's certainly an upside with that pick. You got only 1 left, but I like the way your team is coming together. I got 2 here. I got money to spend. I'm not even going to prioritize using all my money. I'm probably going to leave some money on the table. But for starters, I am going to go with Chandler Phillips here. We've seen Chandler Phillips get hot. He's had a few really strong outings. I'm mainly referring to even just last week, where he, gained 2 strokes putting. He gained almost 3 strokes with his driver, almost 2 strokes on approach. He was atrocious on his approach at the Pro Card, but he got 13th and gained 7 strokes putting. He can get hot with the putter. If he does that this week, he can get a really good outing. He doesn't need to, have an unbelievable week ball striking the way he plays to compete this week. If he just has above average ball striking and gets hot with his short game, you can get a really solid result at only 7,600. David, you're up now with your 5th pick. You got 9,200 to spend, so salary shouldn't be much of an issue. Who are you targeting here?
Yeah, just to touch on Sami Valimaki, I really do like that pivot from Spence. I think he's really boom or bust. But we saw when he went over to the DP Tour, and Spence, when he said he hasn't had a top 30 in his last 13 starts, I assume that was only PGA Tour.
PGA, it's been a lot better on the DP Tour.
As soon as he stepped down to DP Tour, he's had a couple of like a 12th and a 9th, and let's face it, like this strength of field is kind of comparable to a DP Tour event when you've got guys like Rory McIlroy at the top of the card, right? So I think that's really interesting. I love Chandler Phillips. I've got a lot of time for him as well. So I think 2 solid selections for you guys rounding out the tail end of this draft. I'm going to go and take Jacob Bridgman here. I think that he's a really nice pivot because you've got Patton Kizzire and Daniel Berger there, eating up a ton of ownership. Daniel Berger particularly, which I think is for good reason. As I said, I do like that play. I think he's good chalk despite the risks involved. But Jacob Bridgman's had 3 19th place finishes or better in his last 4 starts, including 11th last week at the Sanderson Farms. He's a positive driver, long off the tee. His driving accuracy has also improved a lot in his recent tournaments as well. And also just like he can make putts. I mean, he's consistently gaining 4 to 5 strokes putting at every tournament. I do think you're going to need to go pretty low at this tournament in order to stay competitive. The greens are huge. There's 7,000 square feet on average, so some of the biggest greens that we're going to see on tour, and some of that lag butting acumen is really going to come into play. I like the benefit of the added driving distance with those 2 drivable par 4s and 3 par 5s as well. So I think Drake Bridgman can go low. I think that he's a potentially interesting pivot in the 7K range again.
Yeah, Bridgman was the guy I was looking at as well for one of my next picks. I think he's an interesting pick. We've seen him have some upside, which, at 7,600 makes him very interesting. Audience, you have 2 here. I see some nominations in. We're going to need some seconds to finalize your draft. These will be your last 2 picks. You have enough money to spend. Obviously, you can't just take anybody because, you could run out of salary, but you have enough to kind of go get who you want. So interested to see who the audience locks in. While we wait, Spence, we'll look to get your take on the last couple picks as well.
Love the Chandler Phillips pick. That's who I was planning to take on the way back. In retrospect, maybe I should have gone Meisner Phillips, ended this with Valimaki. Bridgman would have been one of the other choices that was in play for me with Phillips being gone. So definitely have made things a little bit, if not a lot more complicated of how to round out this build. Because it's tough when Berger is not an option for me to take. There's a lot of names that have been removed. So I think both of those 2 selections were very savvy.
All right. Audience, it looks like Ben Griffin. Nope, that's only one. Audience, we're going to need some doubles to finalize this draft. There are a few nominations out there, but we're going to need something confirmed to get their pick in. And, I might add an interesting wrinkle for team audience. You guys are moving slow. David's up next. He looks ready to go. Maybe we let David steal a pick and go ahead. And, those are the rules. There's a timer. You got to pick within the time frame. Silent Assassin, not all heroes wear caps. Way to get the pick in. I believe that is a double. Yes, Bukowski did say Schmitty, so that's going to count. Schmid is locked. And you guys need one more Ben Griffin. If you can, I don't think you can afford Ben Griffin. Can they afford Ben Griffin? No, right? No, you can't afford Ben Griffin. You're going to need one more that's not Ben Griffin that you guys can afford. I would stop making rules, but clearly you guys don't follow them, as there's one right here, which is staying within the draft that you guys can't follow. So don't tell me to stop making rules, because we need rules. There has to be order. Otherwise, it would just be chaos. So therefore, we need the rules. Edward, thank you very much. But we're still going to need that last pick. Nick Taylor, Zach, appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys Nick Taylor. Zach's your captain. You guys went too slow. So Nick Taylor, it is. Lock it in with the final pick. And I'm totally okay with leaving $1,200 on the table this week. I don't think you need to force spending all your money. I am also going to leave a significant amount on the table in my draft. There's really not many options for me to even take in the high 8K range at this point. I'm going to have to leave some money on the table as well. Audience, I really liked your team going into this last round. You guys really blew it with your last 2 picks. Don't love this Taylor. But you guys started off well. David, you're up with your last pick. We love your take on the audience here and how you rounded out your draft.
I just love the vitriol, and it just keeps coming, and usually unwarranted, sometimes warranted, but it's great. If I was audience and the audience had got around to it, I would have preferred Patrick Rodgers to Nick Taylor. I think his game suits the golf course a lot better. I might give the audience the chance to sub out Patrick Rodgers for Nick Taylor if they want, because they can afford him and not leave so much on the table. Again, as you said, Joel, I really don't think that there is any problem at all leaving 1,500, 2,000 on the table. We saw the optimal last week had 2,000 left on the table plus. So it is the kind of tournament where you can take risks like that and go for it. I just personally think that Patrick Rodgers is much better suited to the golf course than Nick Taylor. So maybe if 3 people say Patrick Rodgers in the chat, we'll let the audience take them. But yeah, Manny Schmidt, I think is interesting as well. Look, probably no surprise where I'm going with my final pick here. I'm just going to take Keith Mitchell. Look, he's on a run of 3 finishes of 12th or better, including 3rd last week. Yes, he kind of screwed it up at the last hole there. Yes, he 3-putted the last to miss the playoff. But he did have a putt to win the tournament, and he probably should have won the tournament. And look, the fact is he's played very well at TPC Scottsdale, particularly another Tom Weiskopf design. He's had a 10th, 16th, and a 17th there. Bear in mind, some of those have been signature events, so it's some of the strongest fields that we see on the PGA Tour, and he's playing up in those events compared to what he plays this week as well. And he's also had a 20th and a 26th in 2 or 3 starts at TPC Craig Ranch, another Weiskopf design in McKinney, Texas, another birdie fest. Look, I agree, you know, he might not have all the win equity that you want for some of this price, but I think as well there's going to be quite a few people who were burned last week who really felt he was going to come out and win, who maybe don't go back to the till again this week. And he's just playing really good golf, and particularly his putter has improved a lot, which I think is really, really promising, because that's obviously been the flaw in Mitchell's game for most of his career, and it's come on 3 different putting surfaces. I point that out as well. It's like 3 different grass types he's gained putting in all 3. So that, for me, is another promising sign that maybe those putting improvements are actually sticky and are actually going to remain moving forward, which is the key for Keith Mitchell, really.
Yeah, and in this field, you know, I typically don't like Keith Mitchell, but in this field, he's the best, most talented golfer in the field. So, you know, this isn't, you know, in terms of talent, you know, I think there's certainly obviously upside. I think he's the most talented golfer in the field. I typically shy away from Mitchell in tougher fields, but here I think it's a good spot to take the chance on him. So I like that pick there. For me here with my last pick, I really debated this for a while. I am going to go ahead and take Bud Cauley here. 7,400. I'm leaving a good amount of money, 1,400 on the table. But if you just look at Bud Cauley, even just last week, he was very consistent. He really he's hitting the ball really well. The ball striking is there, but he's gaining in every category. He's good off the tee, good on approach. He's got around the green game. He can find a hot putter. I think the well-balanced approach from Cauley can translate. You know, this is a guy who was a really big prospect. He had a lot of injuries and fell off the map. He's been playing more recently. He's healthy now. And I think the spot for him to show up and have a really good result is in one of these watered-down events. You know, obviously he showed up last week. He looked really good. I think that carries over. I think he's playing good golf. So at 7,400, I think Bud Cauley is getting overlooked a bit. And the good thing is, if you look at the ownership, it's nothing. I mean, at 5%, especially with compared to some of the ownership you're getting around him, I'm happy to take that on. Spence, would love your take on the last few picks in this round, and then you're up with your last.
What are we doing with the audience? Are we giving them Patrick Rodgers? Are they keeping Nick Taylor?
I will let David make that final call.
I think it's been endorsed. There was Albert, Ed, Jay Bukowski, James, Jonathan, who knows? Also advocating for Rodgers. So, yeah, look, I think let's give them Rodgers. I think there's enough endorsement there to change it over to Rodgers. So, watch Nick Taylor now win this tournament. Nick Taylor, by the way, won the at TPC Scottsdale. So it's not that I hate Nick Taylor in this tournament. I just think Patrick Rodgers is objectively a better player. So, yep, best of luck, audience. And if he does not come through for you, I apologize profusely in advance.
There you have it. All right. Spence, you got one left, 7,900. How you rounding out your squad?
So I'll talk about Rodgers even a little bit here from the audience selection and kind of get into my selection. So as everybody knows, one of the things I like to do is putting is a very volatile statistic. And I like to look at baseline projections or baseline stats versus the actual course specific projection. So here you have bent grass greens. They're going to be very pure. How do players perform on those particular green complexes versus if you threw them anywhere else that wasn't bent grass and easy? And there were a handful of names that got substantially better. Chris Kirk, Daniel Berger, Steven Yeager, Patrick Rogers, which we just talked about. Seamus saw a very big improvement. There are two names, though, that are definitely not thought of as good putters that I've been trying to figure out which one of the two routes I want to go. It's Alex Smalley and Doug Gim. Both of them see a substantial improvement in my model for expected putting for this specific course. I feel like I'm almost just playing like the same thing every single week here with Doug Gim, to where Gim has been very safe. He's making a lot of cuts. The putter has held him back so frequently that we're getting this capped ceiling, would be the best way to word it, where there's a lot of finishes that are landing in that 30th to 40th, and with it is still coming a lot of popularity. I'm going to go back down with Gim one more time, though. I just think that at some point, and I've said this on shows over the past couple weeks even, something has to give here. Either the statistical data has to get worse and regress, or at some point we have to get a high-end result from him. And I think if you put him specifically on Bentgrass here, with the upside that he does have with the ball striking inside of my model, I'll take Doug Gim at 11%, a little bit higher than you might think with the results, a little bit lower than you might think with some of the popularity that we've gotten in the last little bit. There seems to be some back and forth in the market of what the thoughts actually are on him. Some people think he's overrated. Some people think he's underrated. So I'll take Doug Gim here at 7,900, but I did very much consider Alex Smalley.
You know, it's really funny. When I was taking my pick, my three guys I had on the screen I was looking at were Gim, Smalley, and Cauley. So we were on the same mind wavelength there with that final pick. I was thinking the same thing. Gim, all the reasons you said, he has the history. He has, certainly upside. He's pretty inconsistent, but in this watered down field, I think he can get a really good result. So I certainly can see why you went in that direction. But that's a wrap for this draft. Don't forget, smash the like button and give us a follow. It goes a long way. If you're not already, which I know most of you are, don't forget to sign up for Win Daily. You watch our show every week. But after the show, we post weather updates. So as the week goes on, if there's any weather edge to be had, you'll get that within the Discord. You get Steven's ownership article. It's really critical to understand ownership in these tournaments, especially if you're playing GPPs, because that's how you find your edge. And then, of course, we'll have some outrights that we post. So you can get those outrights, get some winning bets that we'll be posting in Discord throughout the week, and follow along with us. Before we get you out of here tonight, though, we are going to give you our first-round leader. Sometimes we'll just give a matchup play if preferred. And we'll start with you tonight, David. Who are you looking at in the first-round leader market?
Yes, I've got 5 this week, but I mean, everyone's just so long in this market, which, rightly so, because it does seem to be a wide open market in terms of the number of people who could potentially be first round leaders in this kind of event, where an 8 under, 9 under could easily be what you need to score for the first round lead here. So I've got 5, but all priced pretty low. First, Seamus Power, who's my favorite player on the board in the betting markets and on the DFS board. So he's had 6 out of 10 top 18s in his most recent 10 starts on the first round leaders. 6 times he's been in the top 18. Andrew Novak at 50 to 1. He's had a 3rd and a 6th in his last 7 starts in the first round. Daniel Berger, who is at 60 to 1, like horrendously mispriced for me, given what he's been doing in his last tournament. He looks so much better 5th after the first round last week as well. Patrick Rogers at 66 to 1. He's had a 3rd and a 6th in his last 9 starts in the first round, and I probably do trust him more in that first round market than on my outright betting card. And then final one's Vince Whaley at 80 to 1. He's had a 4th and a 9th in the first round in his last 4 starts, so I think that's really nice value. The one who was unlucky to miss out for me was Joseph Bramlett, who's 110 to 1. I think he's an interesting play. We've only seen this 007 XL Bentgrass, which is what these greens are called, at one other tournament, and that's Colonial. And surprisingly, that's actually where Joseph Bramlett's putted well, which is his biggest bugbear, is that he can not putt to save himself. But he did gain strokes putting on this type of surface back at Colonial, and his approach metric still remains really high. He's a very, very long driver of the golf ball, so there's a potential for birdies, a potential for eagles as well. So if you do want to add a sneaky 6-1 in, Joseph Bramlett, and I do like him as a sneaky pivot in DFS as well.
All right. I love it. Spence, how about you? Who are you looking at in the first round leader market?
So I will update on Win Daily if anything comes to fruition in that market. I will give some other things though for the show. This is a price that has been on the move. You might be able to still find it. You might not. Like I think David and I are very lockstep with Seamus Power this week. I took him over Bo Hostler at -125. May or may not still be able to find that price, but the one I will give on here that you can find the number, it's over on Bet Rivers. Sami Valimaki, top 30 at +225. I also took him for a top 10 at 10-1. It's that boomer bust nature that I'm trying to take on with Valimaki this weekend. I'm going to shoot for the ceiling potential that he provides in my sheet.
All right, there you have it. I love it. I got 4 first-round leader plays this week. I'll start with my long shot. It would be a shame for me not to mention this golfer's name on a show, especially in a watered-down field. A guy I love. And you get a really good number for first-round leader at 90-1, and that's Rio. David, stay with me here. Hisaswine? Hitsaswine.
You did so well with it last week, Joel, as well. Hisatsune.
Hisatsune. I was close.
So close. So
I
close.
very close. But
you
90-1.
You did good last week. You did good last week.
Thank you. I'm working on it. I'm getting there. 90-1, I think is a really good number. And I think a first-round leader bet for him suits him better than a tournament long because he can pop for a round. He tends to struggle with consistency for all 4. So I think you get a really strong number there at 90-1. I'm with you, David, on Daniel Berger. 60-1 seems like too big a number. I'm on the Berger play as well. Bud Cauley, guy I drafted. I just like him this week. I think people are overlooking him at 60-1. And lastly, Lucas Glover at 50-1. I do think this is a week to take a shot on a longer shot because they're all probably closer to the same than the normal week. So you have a higher probability of cashing a bigger number. That's a wrap for tonight. Good luck this week. Let us know which team you think is best. Who's going to win? Will Spence be able to get a repeat or one of us take him down? We will come back next week, crown a champion, and do it again. Good luck. And did I forget anything?
Just quickly on Rio Hisatsune, I do like that call because he's actually the defending champion at the Open de France. I'll be covering all the DP World Tour as well. So another reason to click that link in the description. Sign up for Win Daily right now to get all of our coverage, including DP World Tour. Lots of money-making opportunities over there. It's a very soft market. But he's the defending champion at the moment over in the French Open, and he's chosen to play this week at the Desert Black Forest Championship, whatever this tournament's called. So the fact he's here this week, I think it says a lot about where his priorities lie and potentially that he thinks this might be a golf course that suits him because he could be back home in his original tour on the DP World Tour defending his title if he really wanted to.
Interesting. So maybe got to put him in our radar. Wasn't drafted, but maybe he should have been. So to be determined. Should be a fun week. Good luck. And of course,